My pumpkin lost its brightness. Hello, welcome to the Wild Review. I'm the Wild Reviewer. Welcome to night 17 of 31 Wild Halloween Review Nights. I said that right? Yeah, 31 Wild Halloween Review Nights. My neck hurts. Welcome back to the show, folks. It's night 17 and we're in the middle of talking about Halloweentown, the popular Disney Channel original movie series. Should I keep saying Disney Channel original movie? I either say that or DCOM. I mean, Disney Channel movie also fits. Disney Channel movie also works. Anyway, 2 days ago we talked about the first movie. Yesterday we talked about the second movie. Today we're going to talk about its third film in the series, Halloweentown High. Released in 2004, another 2 years have gone by since the events of the second movie, and we see Marnie leading a group of teens from Halloweentown into the mortal world to attend a human high school. This is all part of a plan she put together that allows openness between both worlds. The Halloweentown Council agrees, especially after Marnie accidentally puts their family's magic at risk of being taken away if things don't work out. With everything looking good so far, the only thing that seems to be in their way is the legend of the Knight of the Iron Dagger, a being who makes his way into the mortal world determined to wipe all magic. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, this film series as a whole is a bit more magical than I think it needs to be. I guess it makes sense, though, because the main characters are witches, and witches deal with magic. But there were leprechauns in this movie. I didn't make this comment yet, but Halloweentown is the place where all the supernatural beings go to be separate from the humans. But there's no preference to what supernatural can be. I mean, there aren't just monsters and other creatures that would fit into the holiday of Halloween, but there's fairies and pixies and I'm assuming leprechauns based on the fact we saw them in this film. What do leprechauns have to do with Halloween? Nothing! Unless they're evil, then that would make a difference. Alright, note time. First note I put down: how many houses do these people own? Or how many houses have they owned? We started off with the kids in one house, then we see them again 2 years later, then they're in a different house, and then we now see them again 2 years later after the second movie, and they're in a completely new house. Did they just constantly move every 2 years? Was that something established in the film that just kind of went over my head? I couldn't have been the only one who noticed that. It was the first scene of the film. I instantly knew the living room was different, and I was like, well, maybe we're just seeing a different angle of it. But no, we see the exterior of the house and we see the kitchen. I'm like, yeah, this is a different freaking house. So like I mentioned before, and by before I mean yesterday, one of the cast members from High School Musical was in this, and that was something that I knew about this film. I was very exposed to the previous films, like I've said before, and I knew about this film and the final film, but I saw like little trailers, but I draw blanks whenever I think of them because I don't know much about them. The one thing I do know about this film is that Lucas, how do you say his last name? Lucas Grabeel, is that how you properly say that? The guy who plays Ryan in High School Musical is in this film series. And I specifically know that, not just because I recognize the face, but also they make it very clear in the trailer that he's from High School Musical. He plays one of the teenagers from Halloweentown that goes to the mortal high school that Marnie and Aggie bring them to. Aggie gets a job as a teacher in the high school, and she keeps jumping back and forth from a different subject. She started out as a science teacher, then a history teacher, and then a gym teacher. Ethan is one of the teens from Halloweentown. He's transferred over to the mortal high school, and he's also an assistant of the villain. I shouldn't even say assistant. He's the son of the villain. I guess since I brought up the villain in the film, I guess it would make sense I talk about him. I'll bring him up really quick, and then we can go back into what I was talking about. I have a habit of going off topic a lot. I didn't expect the villain to be who I thought it was in the film. It wasn't Ethan, it was his dad, who is one of the council members. I get why, because he just doesn't think the portal being open 24/7 is a good idea. and he purposely wanted it shut, so he had to make sure that it got shut, and he even ended up taking the magic away from the Cromwells. It's interesting though because they have Marnie meet a new guy in this film, and if you remember in the second film they had Cal's... What the hell was that? If you remember in the second film they had Cal be the love interest for Marnie for like the first 10 minutes of the film, and then he revealed to be kind of an idiot and a villain. But that's kind of brought into this film because there's a new kid who started out on the exact same day as all the teens from Halloweentown did, and they suspect that he might be the knight or the person from Halloweentown that's kind of stalking over all these kids. So you have him as a character, but then you also have the principal character who starts a little romantic thing between himself and Aggie. And it really wasn't until he looked out the window where the sword for the knight on the sidewalk was. It was there and then it vanished away. He looked at the sidewalk when it wasn't there. And then he just kind of looked serious when he turned back to the camera, and that gave me a hint, okay, here's our villain. I expected it to be him. What I didn't expect was for it to be Ethan's dad. He kind of came out of nowhere, so alright, you got me there. Props to you, Halloweentown. You got me this once. The principal was just an accomplice. Ethan was the son. The real villain is the dad. Well done. To go back to Ethan, he is not the only character in the film that is played by somebody who was in High School Musical, which is very surprising to me because I only remember him being in the trailers. Alicia Rulin. I believe I'm saying that name right. She was the piano player in High School Musical. She wore the hat. She played a character named Natalie, who was actually a pink troll. So that was cool. When I first saw her face, I was like, I know that face from somewhere. And then I quickly looked her up. I was like, oh, they got two people from High School Musical. Which kind of upsets me a little because they both had pretty prominent roles in High School Musical. But Lucas was the only one who got the recognition. Now, here's my verdict with this film in regards to the past two films. I found the first one to be cool. The second one, I enjoyed a little, but still found it cool. It's on like the same level as the first one. This one, I actually had a good number of laughs at. And also, something I noticed is it is very different from the first two movies, and it's not just because the characters are older. It's actually more about how the tone of the whole film was and the structure of it. The first two films were very similar to each other in sense of music and the jokes and the way that things were being written. You can tell it's got that typical 90s decom cheesiness to it. This one felt a little bit different. The theme music that you heard in the first two films, it played especially in the beginning of the second movie. I know it was in the first one. It wasn't in this film, which was interesting. And it didn't come off as that cheesy. It felt like I was watching your average TV movie. And to be more specific, it felt like a decom that fit in the time that it did when it came out. So this came out in 2004. The way the whole structure of the film is regarding its tone is much further than how the tone was of the first two films. And I think that's pretty interesting. That's how I felt. You can disagree because you're entitled to that. Yeah, I mean, I felt something different while watching it. And I did find this one a bit amusing. There weren't as that many jokes like I thought there were going to be. I thought the teenagers from Halloweentown being in this normal world, I mean, it started off funny. I thought it was going to get played out. I thought, oh, it's just going to be nonsense. It actually was paced really well. If I gotta be honest, there weren't that many laughable jokes. It was just an entertaining film to watch. So yeah, I liked it. But there were a few things that I found a little hard to wrap my head around, and they mostly revolve around Halloween things. Specifically, the ending. One of those things before the ending, it's kind of in the middle of the film, Marnie and Aggie take the teens to the mall, and they all go their own ways. They're all having fun. They're having laughs and they're smiling, and then they walk in front of a Halloween store, and they feel offended by the way that people look at them as, with like how the masks and costumes look. And a little argument starts, and it was caused by Ethan, who made a comment back to one of the school bullies who just so happened to be there when they did. So a little fight happens there. It ends up on the news that a bunch of monsters were in front of the store. What I can't wrap my head around is why don't they just think that they are employees of the store? Why is it that everybody in this town just ultimately assumes that if you see somebody who looks like a monster or is acting like a monster, that they are monsters? And the same thing goes for the ending, because there's a Halloween festival that goes on, which I believe is on Halloween again. They're putting together a haunted house for the festival, and Ethan's dad comes out and he's causing trouble because that's his way of making sure that everything goes to plan, closing up the portal. But it's like all these scary things and these creatures come out of the haunted house and everybody's terrified, which is the point of a haunted house. Like Dylan has been saying throughout the film, we should include fake blood and so-and-so to make it scary. I really like Dylan's character, by the way. I like how he is in this film. That's another thing I'll quickly comment on. I like Dylan's character. He's one of my favorite characters in this series. But all these people are running out of the haunted house because monsters are chasing them, and everybody just gets really concerned. It's like, it's Halloween, folks. That happens in a haunted house. Yeah, it even goes to the extent where the Cromwells are kind of caught doing their magic to kind of stop everything. And the principal, who's been getting friendly with Aggie, he goes, oh, they're the ones behind this, because he's part of the plan to close the portal between Halloweentown and the normal world. And he just starts an angry mob up against the Cromwell family and the creatures that are now going to their high school, and it becomes a whole thing with, like, you know, it's not about what's on the outside, it's about what's on the inside. You should like us no matter what. Just because we're monsters, we can't live together. That's the whole point of what we're trying to achieve here. I get that, but it's Halloween. The Cromwells are getting chased because of being very scary on Halloween. I mean, being put in danger is one thing. I don't think anybody was in danger. Maybe, I mean, monsters were trying to attack them. I mean, that's one thing. They could have easily just thought that it was just a show. But they didn't do that. And even after that, when the magic is taken from Aggie and Marnie, the principal gets down. He's like, oh, are you okay? What happened? Like, he became all concerned, and yet he's the one who started the mob. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about Halloweentown High. Those are all my thoughts. Those are all my notes. That's the film. I thought it was amusing. It was enjoyable. I kind of liked it a little more than the first two movies, honestly, just because I had a little more entertainment value to it. I found a few more laughs. Not the laughs like I have the past two times where I felt they were very cheesy. This one I actually got into the story a little bit. I find it interesting, though, that we have a Halloweentown movie that doesn't take place, nor do we see any Halloweentown. That's interesting. Yeah, so that's Halloweentown High. According to reports that I read, this was supposed to be the final Halloweentown movie, but Disney said, no, let's milk this one more time. And that's where we lead into tomorrow, where we finish up on the Halloweentown movie series. We got one last film, Return to Halloweentown. Now, the only things I know from that film is that the kid from High School Musical, Lucas, he's in that one. And yeah, I'm assuming he's playing the same character that he played in this one. And the character Marnie has been replaced by somebody else. Why? Come back tomorrow and I'll hopefully give you an answer. I gotta look that up myself. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching The Wild Review on The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing. Ow.